What's going on, guys? Nathan here. Today I'm going to give you 7 easy ways to quickly read their poker hand. Use these simple clues next time you play poker to find out exactly whether they have it or not. I'm going to walk you through step-by-step example hands today, showing you exactly how to use these simple methods. These work whether you play live poker in a casino or online poker on the internet. Let's jump into it. Counting down from 7 to 1. Here we go. All right, guys. Number 7 is check raising a paired flop. Now, guys, this is such a ridiculously easy to spot bluff that a lot of our fishy friends, recreational players, amateur players in particular love to use. And I'm going to show you exactly how this plays out right now. Don't fall for this. So you have 2 red sevens, 7 of hearts, 7 of diamonds, and you raise in middle position and a rec player calls you in the big blind. Rec player also stands for fish. Amateur player, basically somebody who doesn't take the game very seriously like you do watching a video like this. They're just playing for fun. They're playing a ton of trashy hands. I'm sure you've encountered these players before. So the flop comes down with the 8-8-3 rainbow, meaning 3 different suits, no possible flush draw. You bet they raise. What is going on? Guys, an 8-8-3 flop is about the most innocuous, harmless board ever created. Basically, when they raise you in this situation, they are representing absolutely nothing. Let's walk you through it right now. So we've got 2 8s on the board here. If a player like this had an 8 in their hand, why would they be raising you here on the flop right now? That doesn't make any sense. And specifically, it doesn't make sense versus this particular player type because we know that recreational players tend to play very passively, meaning that when they have a big hand like trips, so for example, they've got a hand like ace-8, they would just call with that hand. Players like this love to slow play instead of raise. So in a situation like this, guys, I have found from my 10 plus years as a professional poker player that this is almost always some sort of mediocre hand or a complete bluff. For example, some sort of 3, maybe a hand like ace-3, they just randomly decide to raise you with that. Maybe a hand like pocket 5s, or often just a complete airball bluff with a hand like king-queen or king-jack because they're on tilt. So guys, bottom line, this is an easy call. There's no point in raising here because if we do re-raise, we're only going to get action from the handful of hands that have us crushed, such as a slow played pocket aces or pocket kings. So guys, this is just a standard call here. We'll go see the turn in position. Let's move on to tip number 6, which is acting too quickly. Now guys, this is a classic tell, especially in online poker, but this also applies to live poker as well. Basically, when somebody takes no time at all to think, especially on the flop, they often aren't strong. Once again, this is a tell that is almost always used by the recreational players, the amateurs, the fish. Let me give you an example once again. If somebody flops the straight with a hand like 8-9 of hearts on the flop of 7-6-5, they're not going to just raise you or make a quick bet in 1 or 2 seconds. No, instead, they're going to think about it. First off, they're going to be shocked that they have a straight. It takes most people a couple seconds to actually look at their hand, read the board, and double check that they really do have the monster hand. And secondly, guys, they're going to go through the gears in their head of thinking, how can they get the most money out of you? They have the best hand possible. Should they slow play their hand? Should they fast play their hand by raising, or should they just call? You guys get the idea. When somebody has a really strong hand in poker, like 3 of a kind, a straight, something really strong, they're going to take some time to think about it. So on the flip side, when they just instantly raise you or make a quick bet without even thinking, it is almost always a mediocre hand at best. You should definitely be calling or even raising in a situation like this. Let's move on to easy way to read their poker hand number 5, and that is talking too much, aka false bravado. Now, for those of you guys who play live poker in the casino, you have no doubt seen this one before. This is a very, very classic physical tell, but this can also apply in online poker as well. If you have the chat box turned on, I would recommend actually leaving it off most of the time, but sometimes it can help you spot the tells from our classic motor mouth at the table. Guys, we've all seen Phil Hellmuth give the speech, and I'm going to talk about the speech coming up, by the way, later on in the video. But basically, guys, when somebody is talking a lot, when they're taunting you, especially, you know, for example, they start egging you on, go away, you're just wasting everyone's time. We all know you're going to fold your hand. When they say stuff like that, guys, this is a very, very classic tell that they are weak and they really just want to make you fold. And I should should say that the opposite also applies. Typically when somebody zips it, all of a sudden they stop talking, they get all shaky hands as well when they're making their raise. This is almost always a sign of a weak hand. Guys, basically opposites almost always apply, especially with amateurs at the poker table. When they act strong, they actually got a weak hand, and then when they act quiet and nervous, they often have the strong hand. All right, let's move on to sign number 4 to quickly read their poker hand, and that is using a larger than normal bet sizing. Guys, this is a very classic tell, especially versus amateur players once again, which is making a bigger bet than normal. This is another classic sign of weakness. Amateur players do this all the time in order to make you go away. I call this the little dog with the big bark syndrome. Basically, they think that if they just shove a big bet into the middle of the pot, that it's going to scare you and make you go away. Guys, do not fall for this classic ploy at the poker table. I've seen this so much. Often with weaker players, this is something like a middle pair hand, perhaps top pair with a bad kicker, basically a mediocre type of hand where an amateur player is thinking that making a big bet is somehow going to scare you away. Usually what you want to do, guys, in a spot like this is just call and go see the turn and river, play some poker. Let's move on to sign number 3 now, and this is a big one, is the story doesn't make any sense. Now, I've talked about this one in a lot of the videos here on the channel before, but I'm going to walk you through another example right now, because once I learned this strategy, this really changed my results at the table. And basically, guys, you need to understand 2 things in poker: the person's hand and the range that they're representing. When they do not match each other, that is often the sign of a weak hand. So for example, you raise up ace jack of diamonds in the cutoff and a lag calls you on the button. So a lag is a loose and aggressive player. We raised on the cutoff, they called on the button, so they're going to have position on us. So we already know here, given the player type, they're going to call us with a very wide range here, looking to outplay us with the benefit of having position on the flop, turn, and river. So we're going to assume that by the river, the board reads the jack, 7, 6, king, queen, with 2 hearts on the board. The flush draw missed on the river, so there's no possible flush on this board. We're going to assume that you check call the entire way. This is exactly how I'd recommend playing this hand. In fact, I have multiple videos in my Elite Poker Training University, 17 plus hours of advanced training, 50 plus videos. Enrollment is open right now. I will leave a link to that in the description below. But guys, this is the way to play against a loose and aggressive player. When you flop top pair and the board runs out like this, the leg is going to turn over the old ace-8 of hearts, which makes perfect sense. This player had a flush draw, the nut flush draw on the flop. They also had a backdoor straight draw and a strong overcard with the ace. This is exactly how I would play this hand as an aggressive player myself, is to fire the triple barrel bluff here, especially when it comes with a king and queen on the turn. Again, I've made videos about that on the channel as well, using scare cards like this. So guys, basically in a situation like this, what this player is doing is they're trying to represent the king or queen, but once again, the story isn't making any sense here because this player just called pre-flop. Typically, if they have big cards like a king or queen, they would have re-raised us before the flop. So once again, guys, hand doesn't match the story that we're being told, which often means a weak hand, a missed draw like this. Don't fall for this typical trick used by loose and aggressive players. I teach this and use this strategy myself. Check, call them in a spot like this where their story doesn't make sense. All right, guys, let's move on to tip number 2 to quickly read their poker hand. And this is one of my all-time favorites, the Hollywood raise plus the speech. Now, guys, we've all seen Phil Hellmuth do this a million times, and you'll notice that he often has a very big hand when he does it. Guys, this is almost always a monster. Don't fall for this common trick either. So for example, you've got 2 red aces, ace of hearts, ace of diamonds, and a tag player re-raises you on the river. So tag stands for tight and aggressive. This is not the same as the loose and aggressive player we just talked about. This is a much tighter player that doesn't bluff very often. This is a regular opponent. This is not a fish. And they re-raise you on the river of 6, 7, 5, jack, king. Guys, I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt that this is almost always a slow played hand, like 8, 9 for the flop straight, pocket 6s for a flop 3 of a kind, aka a set, pocket 7s for a set, pocket 5s for a set, or pocket jacks for a set. I think you guys get the idea. This is a monster hand when they raise you, especially on the turn or river, and they give you some sort of speech about how they're tired of you pushing them around and how they need to make a stand and all this stuff. Guys, do not fall for this tactic. This is all an act trying to get you to call. They have a monster hand in this spot, guys. Even if you have pocket aces, just fold your one pair hand in this spot. Your hand isn't any good. Let's move on to the number one way now to read their poker hand, and that is when they look you right in the eye. Guys, I have seen this a million times at the poker table, especially in live poker games in the casino. Once again, this is the classic tell in poker of strong means weak and weak means strong. When somebody is acting bold and strong at the poker table, this usually means that they have a weak hand. They are trying to look all strong and unconcerned because deep down they are just praying that you fold. On the flip side, when somebody is acting all weak at the poker table, perhaps they've got shaky hands when they reach for their chips or they won't look you in the eye, it is often because they're nervous because they have a big hand and they want to be able to get the most out of you. And these are classic psychological tells that almost all amateurs show off again and again at the poker table. So guys, like and subscribe if you found this video helpful. Try out these 7 simple ways to read their poker hand. Let me know in the comments how they work for you. And if you want to know my entire strategy to beat the small and mid stakes games, make sure you grab a copy of my free poker cheat sheet. That'll be the top link in the description below. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. I will catch you next time.